Hello guys, welcome to Peripheral Vision. I'm Kyle from Kyle's Game Room, and this is the Game Boy player. I wanted to do a review for God knows how long, but I never got good recordings. It's a long story, but we're finally doing it, so that's awesome. Alright, so what the Game Boy player is it's an add-on for the GameCube. So it's kind of like the Super Game Boy for the Super Nintendo, but this one is for GameCube, and it can also not only play regular Game Boy, but it can also play Game Boy Color and Game Boy Advance. Alright, so the way that you gotta put this thing on is you take your GameCube, alright, and I hope you like mine because mine's super awesome. Oh yeah, let me tell you. Okay, and here on the bottom there are 3 different little flaps. There's this one, there's this one, and then there's this one. I know one of them is supposed to be for a modem. I believe it's supposed to be this one, which wasn't really used all that much. Probably only like 1 or 2 games supported it, maybe. But this is the one that we need to take out, right to the left of this little label. Oh yeah, and Easter egg for you. Well, let me switch this to macro mode, and I can hear a click. There we go. So yeah, the DOL, that's supposed to be Dolphin. It's because apparently the GameCube used to be called Project Dolphin. Alright, so fun fact for you. Alright, so what you do is you take this out, and you also want to get a flathead screwdriver. You place this down, then on the bottom, that's where you screw it in. And what's really cool is that these things are pretty much in there, so you won't lose them over time. So there you go. And then you're also going to need a special disc for it. It's going to be a little boot up disc. It's going to look like this. Alright, this is the case for it at least. This is actually what the Japanese cases look like. It's a lot smaller than your normal average Joe case, like this guy right here. Yeah, you can see a massive size difference. But yeah, anyway, fun fact. So you take the disc and you put it in here. This is what the disc looks like. Without the disc, the Game Boy player is completely useless. So keep that in mind. So, suppose you want to play some Game Boy. You just slip it in, turn it on as long as you have the disc in, and then you start playing away. There you go. But you can also switch out even when the thing is on. But I'll show you that later. Suppose you just yank out the game, right? Then you want to play some Game Boy Advance. Get in there. There you go. Good boy. Alright. Then you start playing, and then you're like, okay, now I want to start playing a different game. As you can tell, it's a little difficult to get this game out. So, they thought of that. They put a little switch on the side, so when you switch this, bam, the game's out. It won't fly out like that every time, but there you go, your game's out. And what's really cool is that they add different borders like the Super Game Boy did. So that's super cool. And as you can tell, this guy is black compared to the purple GameCube, and for some that might bother people. But I believe only in America we only got the black ones, while in other countries there were actually different kind of Game Boy players. Like they had one that was purple, so it did match. They also had an orange one, I believe. They had a platinum one. Pretty much whatever GameCube they made, they had a matching color for that in other regions. So for us, we only got the black one. But I don't know if these guys are region locked to the system, because I'm pretty sure the GameCube itself is region locked. So I don't think you can get a European or Japanese Game Boy player and hook it up to an American GameCube and if it works or not. So that kind of sucks. And I remember I did a video talking about the Game Boy video games, and I said how they would not be able to work in a Game Boy player. What a Game Boy player actually is, if you take it apart, it is actually the parts of a Game Boy Advance. So it's not really emulation or anything. It's no software emulations. It's actually the legit hardware, but actually making your TV the screen instead of, I don't know, just a regular old Game Boy screen. And what's really cool about the Game Boy player is, suppose you want to use the GameCube controller, but the D-pad on that is in a weird spot and you might be uncomfortable with it. But if you have the proper cord where it hooks up a Game Boy Advance to one of these controller ports, then you can use your Game Boy Advance or Game Boy Advance SP as a special little controller. So that is really freaking cool. Like, I personally like to use the Game Boy Advance, like the original with the batteries, because it's more comfortable, like in my hands at least. But if you'd rather use a Game Boy Advance SP, then by all means, more power to you. They also made another model of the Game Boy player, but it's not like supposed to be like, oh, it's a thinner model. No, they made one for the Panasonic Q. If you don't know what the Panasonic Q is, here it's Panasonic's version of the GameCube. It is still technically a GameCube. It's that it can also play DVDs. And yeah, that was really cool. They only made so many of them. They were super expensive, so they didn't sell well. They're really rare. So trying to find a proper Game Boy player for the Panasonic Q is also quite a heavy investment. So, let me show you how this thing works. Alright, so now I'm going to be showing you how the Game Boy player is like. Alright, so I put Crash Bandicoot The Huge Adventure in. So as you can tell, it just boots up just like a regular Game Boy Advance should, and it's really cool. Alright, so now let me show you the different in-game, well, not in-game, but like the Game Boy player option that you can do. So if you have the GameCube controller plugged in, this is how you access this. But if you have a Game Boy Advance plugged in, you can't access this menu. Alright, so first up we got this option right here, so you can just change game packs in the middle of the system being on, which is really nice, so you don't have to always turn it off, switch your game, and then turn it back on. So this is really handy. But sometimes I've noticed that it actually fails. Like, even though I do it, I take it out, and then it says, oh, you shouldn't have done that. You have to turn off the system and turn it back on. So that kind of sucks when it happens. Then we got a timer, so like you can limit your kids' play, you know, if you're a cruel parent. Okay, then we got screen filters. We got normal, so how it will normally look like when it's blown up. Or we can sharpen it up a little bit. Or we can soften it up a bit. But I'm going to stick with normal for now. And if you have the component cables, it might help this out. I don't know if the component cables will actually improve the video quality on this or not. I'm hoping that it does, but I don't know. Okay, then here the GameCube controller doesn't have a select button. So you can make it so L and R is still L and R, then use X and Y as select, which I recommend, because the other option is to have it so L and R select and L and R are going to be X and Y, which I don't really like that very much. But at least they give you the option to actually use that as an option, so that's nice. Alright, so as you can tell, the screen size is full, but this is what it's supposed to look like when it's normal. But personally, I don't really like doing that. I'd rather have it full, because then it takes up more of my screen. But it's up to you. Again, I like how they give you options. Alright, so then there's 20 different frames that you can have it set up to. So I'm going to be showing them all off. Okay, so we already have number 20, which is the black, which is good, I guess, if you don't like any of the other borders. Alright, so the first one is a purple Game Boy Advance. The second one is an orange one. And the third one is a black one. And the fourth is a yellow one. Not all these are Game Boy Advance covers. Keep that in mind. Just the first couple are. Then we got a platinum one for the fifth one. Then number 6 is just camouflage. So if you like hunting, or if you're in the army or something like that, then by all means go for this. I don't care what you do. Okay, then we got this 90s skater vibe type of deal right here. At least that's what I'm getting out of it. But yeah, let's move on. Then we got this plaid. It looks like a picnic type of deal. So if you're a country kid, then there you go. Then we got flowers. Then we got this type of pattern. I don't really know. Like, it looks like it's supposed to be like maybe Indian or maybe Chinese. I don't know. If you actually know, then let us know in the comments. Then we got wood. If you like wood, there you go. I'm pretty sure you're tired of seeing that. You don't want to see the Crash logo, because Crash is dope. Okay. Then we got this ancient looking thing, like it's supposed to be like a prophecy, like on a stone tablet or something, or on a wall. Like the Game Boy is supposed to interact with the GameCube one way or another in the future. And now it's pretty much over 10 years ago, because the Game Boy player came out in June 24th here in America, but in Japan I believe it came out in like March, I think. I can't remember. And then we got this robot-looking thing. Like, I don't want to say it's like Tron or anything because that's completely wrong. But it's like all metal and stuff, and it looks really cool. It looks like it's supposed to say stuff around there, but unfortunately we can't read it. Maybe if we had component cables, we might be able to read it, but I'm not sure if it's going to make that much of a difference. So if you actually know what this stuff is trying to say, then let us know in the comments. It's fun to make guesses. So, yeah. Then we got this. You can call it a Tetris design. I wouldn't call it a Tetris design. I just say it's pretty colors, but I'm not going to play with them. Then we got red and blue, or maybe ruby and sapphire. It looks more like indigo to me, but so you can consider this like a Pokemon type of deal. So it's like for ruby and sapphire, or red and blue if you want to pop them in. Then we got denim, if you like jeans a lot, or any type of denim wear. Then we got knitting. So Felicia, if you're watching this, then this is probably perfect for you. Then we got space. Space is nice. Oh yeah. But I'm done with space. Okay, then we got the GameCube one. This is one I actually used a lot as a kid. But nowadays, I just stick with the black border and always have it in full, because then you can see more. Alright, so you can use the analog stick, you can use a D-pad, you can do whatever you want. But people would probably prefer to have a D-pad when they're playing this. But the way that it's set on the GameCube controller, as I said earlier, it kind of feels weird because in the position it's in. But if you're an Xbox player, then you might be used to it already. But I'm more of a PlayStation guy and a Wii guy, and anything Nintendo, you know. Even though I don't think the D-pad was used all that much on the GameCube. Same with the N64. But yeah, I'm done playing Crash. So now let's pop in a different game. Let's pop in some Pokemon Yellow. See, even though I did go out properly and stuff, fine game, fine. Or who knows, I might have done something wrong, I don't know. Alright, so we're just going to switch it out real quick. We're going to pop into Pokemon Yellow, and I'll show you, well, I'll tell you how to set up the Game Boy Advance as a controller. But I'm only going to do this for a little bit. Alright, so here you get the cable, the proper cable, to connect, and oh my god, that is bad. You get the cable, and you connect it to the Game Boy Advance to the top, and then you take the GameCube port, and you put it into player 1 of the GameCube. But I'm actually going to move it to controller 2, so I can plug in my GameCube controller, and try this again. Hold on. Yes. Please change them now, and there we go. That's good. Let's try it again. I don't want to blow into it because apparently it's supposed to be bad for it, but it's so traditional. We'll try it one more time, and if it doesn't work, then we'll start blowing into it. Fine. I apologize for this, folks. But if you are an old kid, you would hear this a lot. But how does it work now? There we go, finally. But now let me tell you how to set it up for the Game Boy. Okay, suppose you have your Game Boy Advance plugged in with the special adapter and everything. As long as the Game Boy player is on, ready to go, that's all you need to do for the Game Boy player. Now you just turn on your Game Boy Advance. Alright, so you can hear it's on. And then it's connecting to the Game Boy player. And as soon as it starts saying Game Boy player on your screen, then that means you can use your Game Boy Advance as a controller. And just like the original Game Boy Advance, you can switch it to widescreen or standard 4:3 frame. I like to play in widescreen in my opinion. But yeah, as you can tell, it makes it in color just like a regular Game Boy Advance. But now we're done. Now let's try some Mario Brothers Deluxe. And I gotta switch to the controller, and I plugged my Game Boy Advance into port 2, and let me see if I can still use it. Yeah, I can still use it. I then used GameCube Controller in port 1, so you don't have to keep unplugging it. So I learned something, and I guess you did too. So you can have the GameCube Controller in port 1, so you can still use the options, while having your Game Boy Advance plugged into port 2, so you can still use it in the game. So that's very nice. So let's change to Super Mario Bros. Deluxe. Okay. Alright, awesome. And some of you may be wondering, can I get this for my Wii? Unfortunately, you cannot. So if you want to get a Game Boy player, make sure you have a GameCube, because it won't work for the Wii. And if you do end up finding some on eBay, you are going to pay maybe a bit. The prices are always all over the place, so keep that in mind. And when you do end up finding the Game Boy player on eBay, make sure you also find a disc, because without the disc, it will not function. It will just be there and look pretty. I'm not sure if it is compatible with the component cables, as I said earlier, so if you do know if it works with the component cables and actually sharpens the image up a little bit, let us know in the comments. And that is pretty much my review of the Game Boy player. Personally, I highly recommend that you track one down. It's awesome, and personally, I think it's like the only reason why one should have a GameCube. Because other than that, you're better off just getting a Wii, because then you can get the component cables for the Wii a lot easier than you can find the component cables for the GameCube. Because component cables for GameCube are like mad expensive. But yeah, trying to find some for the Wii, it's relatively cheap. It's a lot easier to find than GameCube component cables. But yeah, totally, if you have a GameCube, totally get the Game Boy player. It's worth every penny. And if you never had one growing up, then that sucks. But again, track one down. It's worth every penny. Alright, so if you're new to our channel and you like what you see, then like, comment, and subscribe. And if you like my voice for some reason, then go look up Kyle's Game Room. Hopefully Eric will provide a link in the description. And there you go. You can subscribe to me, because I do a bunch of Let's Plays, unboxings, reviews, and live streams. Every Monday at 7 Eastern Standard Time, I personally do a live stream on my channel over at Kyle's Game Room, so check that out. So yeah, guys, I guess what Eric likes to say, later days.